and welcome to this edition of Defacto Review, a weekly roundup of the biggest stories shaping Mongolia. Here with us tonight, economist and commentator Jargal Defacto.
Thank you.
And I am Milena Mendes. We are live on Facebook at V Television, and we love to hear your thoughts. So on Twitter, use hashtag Jargal_Defacto. Coming up on this show tonight. $125 million agreement signed for China-Mongolia economic zone. MSC market cap tops 5-year high of 2 trillion tugrugs on coal renaissance. Batulga skips UN meeting to preside over home affairs. Britain takes over Light Street for Inspire Me Festival. Thank you for joining us, and we're going to start talking about the China-Mongolia Economic Cooperation Zone, where construction is set to begin with a $125 million agreement. China 22 MCC Group on Thursday signed an agreement for infrastructure programs with the municipal government of Ulaanbaatar, China's largest hub for cross-border trade with Mongolia. Under the agreement, the Chinese group is responsible for the construction of underground pipelines, office buildings, roads, and plants within the Chinese section of the zone. The total investment of the projects is around 824 million yuan, about $125 million. Construction of the infrastructure will take over 2 years, and the China 22 MCC Group will be the operator of the facilities for another 13 years. So, Jargal, please tell us, what is the purpose of this economic cooperation zone?
Actually, there was an agreement between two governments in 2015 to make this happening. And it was not clear from Chinese side who will run this whole things and who will operate, who will invest. And this 22 MCC group is a part of large metallurgical corporation group in China, which was founded 1958, and they have so many metallurgical plants. This is the number 22. That's why it's 22. And under the environmental concern, China is reducing many metallurgical plants, which are now looking for good diversification. And I think this company from Tangshan, China, city south, they come into Inner Mongolia and diversifying their business into such an infrastructure building. And also this company has a long experience for infrastructure, construction. So they do the business they are in. And the good thing is they have signed, they agreed. And I think it is enforcing now Mongolia to move faster, because two countries agreed to have 900 hectare squares on two sides, which are meeting at the border. And two sides will be developed, and there will be a certain entrances they go through freely to each other. And it will be huge, not only trading, but factories, not only plants, manufacturing factories, but also trading, e-commerce, and several other comprehensive joint economic cooperation zone. Mongolia has 3 free zones offices, and one of them is there on our side, and 1/3 of Mongolian territory is being put infrastructure together in a place already. So hopefully all this thing will do faster, all the cooperation. But it is also a part of last year agreement of 3 presidents, China, Russia, Mongolia, in Tashkent, to develop further the corridors through Mongolia. And in particular, this corridor is crossing that free economic trade zone we are talking about. Now, Russia, I hope, will be now more faster. And in mid of October, in Irkutsk, in a Russian border city, Mongolian and the Russian governments will have on Commission's annual meeting. Probably they had to make faster the cooperation, any activities at the border. So but in the north border, we have railway corridor at one locations, the roads in another locations, in between them several kilometers. So most probably they may have two zones there. So at the end, it's in the line of Mongolian integration into economy in the region, which we the most needed. And we are looking for also through corridors to have access to the ocean. So all these issues together, I think this economic zone is a good start to work in that direction.
Right, exactly. And now to the average Mongolian living here, what does that mean to them? How much does it change?
Good questions, because China and Mongolia is big economic partner. For us, you cannot imagine Mongolian economy without China. So the zone will give more chance for Mongolian companies to be closer to China. A lot of facilities, logistics will be cheaper because they will abolish 6.5% customs rate from Chinese side. So it will give for Mongolian companies more opportunity to export to China, and for Chinese company to use Mongolian part to produce things and take it back. That means it's a matter of involving more labor. Mm-hmm. That means more concentration of labor towards to that southeast directions rather than Ulaanbaatar.
Right.
We may have more another sub-center at the beginning. And the Chinese economy is so big that it could be one of the substantial large center, including also tourism facility, where on Chinese side the people can come and buy things, and that's how they initially visualize it, this one. And plus, this coming week, there will be largest second Mongolia-China Expo in Hukhot, the capital of Inner Mongolia. And now many Mongolians go this week there. And now China has a lot of things to talk, because now they have already signed agreement. A state-owned company is coming, and now they are going to invest that much about money, as you said, $220 also $1 million. That means China has started their work. So it will hopefully again speed our work. As a result, we will have now a lot for many years talks finally as a deed.
Do you think this could actually bring more foreign investments to Mongolia? Is it a door that's opening for them?
Yes. And this foreign investments comes in two ways, to Chinese part and Mongolian part.
Right.
Now, it is not only clear what is the procedure to cross that border, how often, how freely all goods, labor, capital moves between two zones. Can it be kind of separately, another separate kind of economic space? If it is the case, if we make it out of this truly that universal kind of free trade space of businesses, then the companies would come. Because north of China, Inner Mongolia is growing so fast. And they need also own products which can be probably produced cheaper in that zone, because it's the only zone in Inner Mongolia. So it could be producing more benefits also for Chinese businesses.
We've got to see the development of this story. Moving on, Batulga skips UNGA. President Hotma Batulga skipped the United Nations General Assembly meeting last week, saying he was needed at home while the country remains without a government. Acting Foreign Affairs Minister Monk Orgel attended the meeting in the president's place, despite the fact that he is on the way out after Parliament voted out the government earlier this month. Batulga said there was no need for representatives to attend every session to demonstrate the nation's commitment, and that he was giving domestic affairs higher priority. The decision comes after Batulga faced criticism in Hungary, where some accused him of being there in this trip to watch a judo competition. Are there any indicators that this time that Batulga was here in country, rather than attending the UN meeting, was actually doing something great for this country?
Well, I liked his argument. When he said we are in a crisis first,
Right.
political and economic crisis in a way, because we don't have a government, the acting government.
Right.
We have it. Secondly, we are in economic crisis. Everybody have economy, including the president. And indeed, the previous president had established certain landmark or level of participation, because he was in all UN meetings every fall, and plus he was in all Davos meetings. When president travel, it's a minimum 10 person goes together, and they, of course, they had to order the most expensive hotels, fancy ones, and you know, we don't want him looking very poor.
Right.
Secondly, I think it's interesting, at least rational suggestions, and I don't think every president comes to every UN sessions. However, for a small country like Mongolia, it's important to go to places where each country's leaders come together. Then we can meet many of them in one spot. So it's a matter of selections. It's a matter of making right priorities. Mm-hmm. And hopefully this president will do that. And it's a start, as I see. And, you know, there are so many other things that he has to pay more attention. And he recently also met the UNDP head in Mongolia, this UNDP is the most coordinating agency of UN in Mongolia since 1976. President Batulga had met Mrs. Trunkman, who is the head of UNDP and who is coordinating all UN work in Mongolia. And they have agreed to focus on only 5 issues like unemployment, poverty, environmental issue, children issue, and air pollution. So Mongolia, a president on his side will pay whatever is related to the UN and Mongolia cooperation. He suggests he will focus on that, and he will reintroduce certain methods so that these results of those projects under these 5 topics have more impact on Mongolian society.
Right now, the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, he had put a big show saying that he would not attend the UN meeting. Now, given that President Batulga's decision came shortly after Putin's decision, can we say that maybe Batulga is trying to align himself more closely to Russia over the West?
I don't think so. And plus, we cannot and we should not compare our president with the president of the big powers. It has no sense. Mongolia is the most independent country. You know why? Because nobody is depending on Mongolia or from Mongolia. So we should be knowing our positions, and yet we are interested to develop further at the same level with our 2 neighbors, with the third countries. So there will be more other chances for our president to meet the presidents of other countries as well. But I don't think it will be very premature to compare the small countries' president decisions to go somewhere because decisions of some bigger countries. And plus, UN meetings not every year discusses an issues they require the head of countries' presence. So I don't think it was a big deal that we have missed a big thing from the UN this time. And plus, really, in fact, we are in the economic and political crisis. What he will tell there if back in the country we are in a crisis?
Yeah, it wouldn't look very good for us anyways. Now, moving on, Mongolia's tiny stock market soars on coal trade renaissance. A boom in the coal trade has elevated the Mongolian Stock Exchange's benchmark stock index and pumped the tiny exchange's market capitalization to 5-year highs. Coal miners here are set to increase production on the back of the improved market conditions, while the Mongolian Stock Exchange Top 20 Index has soared more than 45% since the start of the year to highs not seen since March 2012. Total capitalization of the market for the first time in 5 years surpassed on Monday the 2 trillion tugrug mark, which is equivalent to over $812 million. Coal exports, however, may face troubles in the coming months as bottlenecks at the Chinese border slow trade. Now, Jargo, can you please remind our viewers why conditions have improved for coal?
Well, North Korea sanctions. China was importing a lot of coal, particularly brown coal from North Korea. So China started to buy brown coal from Mongolia, which is going through by train through Sanshan border. And as far as the Tawan major coking coal deposit linked with China, still it is by road, by trucks. And this truck's line length was about 40 to 50 kilometers 2-3 months ago. Now it's 160 kilometers.
Wow.
And the people are spending almost 2 weeks in their truck, which is unacceptable. And the reason was Chinese, there were 4 gates working at Chinese sites before. And a month they allowed about 600, 700, no, a day 600 or so cars to go through. Now it's only, it was 1,500 before, now it's only 600. So the result, because out of these 4 gates at the Chinese border, okay, 2 is closed somehow. So that's what we try to understand, why China would close out of 4, 2 of them. And it somehow suggests that there may be other concern. And again, we're too much dependent on Chinese allowances of how many cars we can go through, etc. So it's very pity. And hopefully we will make a railway finally there. But we don't have money not yet. So, but as far as this coal price and coal export increase made this stock exchange doing better jobs, or namely the Tawan company price, share price have increased 12 times for last 5 months, 5 times for last 12 months, and the APU, the liquor producer, share increased 50% for last few months.
And combined, they both come to a close of almost half
that's
of
why,
MSC market
that's
capitalization.
why we cannot say that the market capitalization keep increasing because of, in general conditions of the economy. No. Probably it is with APU. With APU, main thing was also they had to deal with Heineken. The Heineken is buying some shares. So that's the reason why these 2 companies. And speaking about shares at the Mongolian Stock Exchange, I should mention that market capitalization, you said, reached just about 2 trillion MNT. What is 2 trillion? The whole Mongolian economy is 28 trillion tugrugs, or about 11.1 or 2 billion US dollars. Small economy. And our banking asset, total asset of banking sector, is 95% of this GDP equivalent. But by the same token, the capital market capitalization is only 2 trillion, which is 7% of GDP. Now you see, the money market is only 95% of GDP. Capital market is only 7%. Because these 2 markets makes financial market of the country, which altogether less than almost the GDP, which gives such a pattern that money is very expensive. Money market is 1 year term or less securities. Capital market is longer term. So it also explains why don't we have money, why this country is always have a less liquidity than it needs. So now question is, can we improve the market stock exchange situation? Can we have more companies making IPO? That's the questions. No, because there are 227 companies listed in Mongolian Stock Exchange. It was 2 years, 3 years ago, about 500 of them. So much delisting. Why? Because Mongolian Stock Exchange was made for privatization of formerly socialist state-owned companies. So this system is now finished, out of them delisted. So out of 220 plus companies today, only 20 are classical terms IPO companies. You understand? The remaining is from that old socialist period. So what happens is now more shares are being concentrated in the hand of few people, and they are less and less interested to make a public report or make disclosure, which is required by law. So very interesting, very bad situation where out of this 227 companies, only 70% make a financial report. 30% don't make a financial report for stock market. It's unacceptable, and it's the bottleneck of development of trust. People who would buy shares, right?
Right.
So that's the reason why we don't have developed capital market. The second reason is, according to the head of Mongolian Stock Exchange, Mr. Altay, because Mongolian Stock Exchange is a state-owned company, and it has a lot, thus it has a lot of political influence. One political party wins, they change the head of stock exchange. So how come that the market is always dependent on politicians like any other state-owned enterprises? So until Mongolian Stock Exchange is private, I don't expect fairly thorough written procedures and through written documents, procedures that make companies more transparent. So that's the situation in the Mongolian Stock Exchange.
Right, and some analysts are saying that local investment is driving growth. So what's changed among Mongolian investors? Because we have a new government tax on saving interest giving local investors, training sessions held to better educate investors, yields on domestic bonds are failing. So what has changed among Mongolian investors?
Mind of Mongolian investors towards shares or securities on Mongolian Stock Exchange, not very much interested. They are not very much interested, except if the government offer expensive bonds. Remember, bonds interest rate coupons were at the level of 17%, higher than the banking saving rate. At that time, people were interested to buy. Because IMF package, because more money comes, hard currency comes to Mongolia, the government deficit became less because they were not paying any more expensive interest rate for bonds, at least for the time being. So that makes government, they still issue bonds, but they makes the government bonds quite less interested for investors. As a result, Mongolian companies are not buying much at the stock exchange. And those who were buying, because just this export, Tawan Paloi shares, and the news, Heineken buys share of Apu. Only on these two shares, the stock exchange was a little bit going higher, but not rallying much.
Thank you. And moving on to our last topic of the night, Britain at Light Street. The British Embassy took over the Light Street in downtown Ulaanbaatar this weekend for its annual Inspire Me Festival to promote education in the United Kingdom. At Soul Street, where car traffic is blocked one every weekend, visitors took photos with Britain's signature red telephone booths and even child-sized thrones made of swords, after the hit TV and book series Game of Thrones. So what do you think of this idea, allowing groups to come to Light Street for promotion?
Very interesting. Have you been there?
I have.
So
many people were showing up.
A lot British feeling, right?
Right.
The flag, color, Union flag. Huh? Well, Britain it has a particular place in our international relations in mind of Mongolians because it's the first major large country's embassy opened in Mongolia 55 years ago. And it was an important event for us, for ordinary Mongolians, because it was a feeling that we have now diplomatic relations with Britain, and through the language with increase of English all around the world, Mongolians also tend to learn more, likes studying more. And Britain has been always supporting our democratic changes, in particular recently this Chevening scholarship. And several other scholarships keep coming, and a lot of young, bright Mongolians have a good chance to study in Britain at the, with that scholarship. So people are competing, very competitive, nice program. And this year it is organized in such a fun way, good, broad way, gives hope that more Mongolians will have a chance to go there. But the issue is, I mean, not only to Britain, but other developed countries, Mongolian brightest go there, study there, comes back, and some of them don't come back recently. But those who came back, in particular at the boom time of economy, some of them are going back now. So it all gives us a good food for thoughts. Why? Because how can this country retain own talents? How we can make such a conditions that they are staying satisfied? And because this frequent change in political arena and economic opportunities disappearing sometimes because this political change, because Mongolia still have a lot of conflicts of interest in our governance, in public governance. You look at this land speculations, look at their licenses. So all this corruptions. And by the way, one of the reasons why we are replacing or changing the government is a corruption as well. It's connected with big concessions, etc. So it's a good new task for new government to think over again and again how we can stop that brain drain of the most talented young, our children, youth and most educated guys.
Well, we're coming to the end. Any final thoughts before we close up?
Well, thank you, I should say support. Thank you very much for watching our program. We try to be independent analysts of what's going on in this country, selecting for events. And please share your thoughts with us. It's a good support for our program. Thank you very much.
Thank you for staying with us tonight, and have a great week, Mongolia. Bye-bye.